Just a reminder that Pick of the Week commissions are still open. Just send a $50 commission via PayPal to hulkied, HULKIED, at gmail.com. Include the name you wish to be credited by, the show and episode you are requesting, and where I can find it. Good animated shows during the 1980s were few and far between. This was the era when Reagan-era capitalist demands overwhelmed the desire to make a quality show. This was when He-Man and Transformers roamed the Earth. But there were bright spots during the decade. The imaginative anime-esque designs of the Thundercats, the anarchic glee of Pee-wee's Playhouse, the surprisingly sublime writing of Garfield and Friends. But perhaps no series displayed a stronger commitment to quality than Jim Henson's Muppet Babies. Part of that is in the title, Jim Henson. Yes, like almost everything during this decade, the property inspired a torrent of merchandising. But unlike almost every other show, strong consideration was also made to making sure the show was good, and people noticed. It was a juggernaut of CBS's Saturday morning lineup for almost the entire decade. It got stellar reviews by critics, and it won 4 consecutive Daytime Emmy Awards for Best Children's Animated Program, including the very first time that award was given out in 1985. So why did Muppet Babies work? Well, I think a decent example is I Want My Muppet TV, the 6th episode of the show's 2nd season. After a fishing expedition, the Muppet Babies are ready to relax with their favorite TV show, Funny Freddy. But what's this? The TV's broken, and Nanny needs to take it to get repaired. That's okay though. The babies have a cardboard box in their own imaginations, and they're going to make their own TV show. Cue the TV show parodies. Examples including the Evening News, Star Trek, even Johnny Carson. As is customary for the original show, each episode includes a song. This episode is called TV Maniacs, which occurs during the episode's music video parody. If you're familiar with the 1980s, one of its mottos was the slogan for MTV. I want my MTV.
I want my MTV!
So yes, I Want My Muppet TV comes from the episode's music video parody. As you can probably guess, the plot for this episode is very thin. It's really just a loose setup on which to string gags and set pieces on. In fact, most episodes of Muppet Babies really are like this. One of the reasons is obvious. The main audience for this show is 2 to 5-year-olds, so there was an incentive to keep the plot simple enough for them to follow. That said, Henson was all about making shows that would appeal to young and old, as could be seen in Sesame Street and The Muppet Show. A 4-year-old in 1985 wasn't going to recognize Johnny Carson, but the parent watching alongside them would have. There is something to appreciate on both a kid level and an adult level, and that still holds true today. I got a lot of nostalgic joy out of these parodies. But I'd say the other reason you don't need a strong plot here is because the characters are just so strongly defined. It's a character-driven show, not a plot-driven one, and the fun of watching this episode was just seeing how they interacted with each other. You can make do with a one-sentence plot because it's really the character interactions that carry this show. Muppet Babies is overflowing with notable Fox Kids names. Obviously, the big one that everyone's going to notice is Margaret Loesch, who executive produced this episode and the majority of the series in her capacity as president of Marvel Productions. As this is season 2, Skeeter and Animal are voiced by Howie Mandel. who would go on to help develop Bobby's World, one of the original Fox Kids shows, where he voiced Bobby for that show's entire run. The art director here was Takashi, who would go on to serve on Peter Pan and the Pirates, another OG Fox Kids show. Producer Bob Richardson would move to Spider-Man 94 as a supervising producer and director of all 65 of that show's episodes. Jim Graziano's Graz Entertainment would co-produce X-Men and The Tick. And Henson's Michael K. Frith would executive produce Dog City. Just a huge murderer's row of major Fox Kids talent here. And even more incredibly, this specific episode closes with Gonzo welcoming us to the Weirdo Zone. While obviously a takeoff of The Twilight Zone, this would become the title of a Gonzo-focused episode in Season 3, which featured clips from the movie Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, the popularity of which convinced then new Marvel Productions owner New World Entertainment to make an actual Killer Tomato sequel that ultimately became a cartoon itself on Fox Kids. This is wild! But aside from all of those Fox Kids links, the major creative name for Muppet Babies would be Jeffrey Scott, who developed the concept and wrote virtually every episode of the first 3 seasons, including this one. His biggest animation credit would, in fact, be Muppet Babies, but he also worked on a number of shows like Dragon Tales, Mega Man, and The Wacky World of Tex Avery. Yeah. He's also, and I am being completely serious here, Mo Howard's grandson. He is related by blood to the Three Stooges. That is awesome. According to Michael Frith, it was Scott who developed the show's signature concept of mixing live-action footage with original animation. This episode is no exception, using not only stock footage, but scenes from real-life TV shows and movies. The aforementioned Johnny Carson and Star Trek, and also major recent hit movie Ghostbusters. These were iconic even at the time, and they still hold significant cachet to this day. This strategy was partly to appeal to older viewers, but it was also a way to reduce costs. The more live action footage you use, the less you have to animate. Jim Henson's sterling reputation also made it easier to cheaply acquire some of the more notable movies and shows referenced in the show. This would sadly prove to be a double-edged sword. Muppet Babies has never had a legal home media release, aside from a few VHS tapes here and there. And while no official reason has ever been given, all of those movie and TV clips would almost certainly need to be relicensed. And with Jim Henson no longer around, the cost is likely way too great to justify the return on investment. Hey, it's Jess. Literally a day after I recorded the script for this video, Deadline dropped an article in which Guy Gilchrist, who worked on the show, confirms basically what I say here. But I'm editing this in because now someone has indeed gone on the record. Back to your scheduled video. Every episode, thankfully, is available online in decent quality if you look. Sourced from the series' various runs on network syndication and cable. And also there was a modern reboot recently. This lack of access is a huge bummer, because Muppet Babies was super prescient and forward-thinking. When you think about it, we're all essentially doing what the Muppet Babies did in this episode. We're all making our own TV shows and uploading them for all to see on YouTube. On this very site, you can see comedies, documentaries, cartoons, even live roleplay, much like what the Muppet Babies did every week. Muppet Babies is a show about the power of creativity. and you can't help but notice that it likely inspired a whole generation of creatives. It's coming up pretty early on in Fox Kids Club, and I can't wait to explore it in full.